Hello everyone. Today I'm doing a review of a watch that I consider to be one of the most beautiful, underrated, undervalued watches in Watchdom, the Orient Star Classic AF series. By all rights, this watch should cost far more than it does. So why is it so cheap? Is there something wrong with it? That coming up next. Orient Star, for those who don't already know, is the high-end arm of the Orient Watch Company of Japan. Orient Watch Company is now part of the Seiko Group, but maintains its independence and acts like a boutique watchmaker. Orient is one of a handful of true watch manufacturers in the world, making their own parts and their own in-house calibers. Orient Star is the upper tier of the Orient Watch Company, much like Grand Seiko is to Seiko. But unlike Seiko, or Omega, or Rolex, you pay almost no premium for the Orient Star brand name. In most luxury watches, the watch itself is about 20 to 30% of the price, and the other 70 or 80% is for things like retail costs, marketing, and goodwill. So for example, if you spend $10,000 on a watch, maybe $2,000 of that is for the watch itself, and the remaining $8,000 is what you pay for the brand's history and prestige. With Orient Star, on the other hand, most of what you pay goes toward the watch. Part of the reason for this is because Orient, quite frankly, does a lot of things wrong as a company. They don't market themselves well. Most people have never heard of Orient watches. They have far too many models, and many of the models are niche and quirky or have some strange flaw, almost as if on purpose. For example, the Orient Sun and Moon has a beautiful design, but it also has two rather plain screws on the face that look like they came from a hardware store. And then there's the reissue of the 70s Diver, which looks like a watch you'd go diving with before heading to the roller disco. Like I said, very niche. But when Orient gets it right, they really get it right. This model, the Orient Star Classic, is the quintessential 1950s style dress watch, except with extra touches to make it modern. In the 1950s, many men's watches had this look, but now few manufacturers still make them, and those that do typically charge thousands of dollars for one. So let's take a closer look. First is the size. In the 1950s, 33mm was the most common size for men's dress watches. Nowadays, that's considered small. Yet Orient didn't go for a modern big watch. Instead, they went with a moderate, pleasing size of 38.5mm, a size that looks good on just about everyone. The case has a classic look with a raised chapter ring and a beautiful smooth finish, while the back of the watch has a modern touch of having a screw-down case back with display window. The crown is not too big, not too small, and has nice deep grooves for a solid grip. It's laser etched with the Orient Star logo and has a 50-meter water resistance. The glass is a beautiful 1950s style domed bubble. I love domed glass on a dress watch because of the way it plays with the light and makes the dial look so interesting. And instead of being made with plexiglass like a 1950s watch would be, this one is made with durable mineral crystal. Sapphire crystal would be better, but this is a dress watch, so presumably you won't be banging it around. I've had this watch for over a year and have 0 scratches. The strap is excellent quality leather, thick and robust. It's embossed with a crocodile texture on the outside, and on the inside, the Orient Star name. The hardware on the strap features the Orient Star logo as well. On mine, I've taken off the original hardware and added a deployment clasp. On watches with thicker, less flexible leather straps like this one, I find it easier to put on the watch using a deployment clasp because the size is always right and you don't have to worry about dropping it while adjusting it. Also, because you're not putting a bend on the leather to put it through the buckle, the straps tend to last longer this way. The face of this watch is, in my opinion, about as beautiful and timeless as you can get. It has the same kind of look and feel as a 1950s Patek Philippe Calatrava or an Omega Constellation, except better executed than the Constellation and at least as well executed as a vintage Calatrava. It's really that good. The face features PVD gold Dauphine hands and a sweep second hand. The dial markers are pyramid style with a double at the 12, and the text and logo on the dial are flawlessly executed and perfectly balanced. At 3 o'clock we have a nicely sized date window, not too big, not too small, and below the 12, a power reserve indicator that shows the maximum 40 hours. It's a satisfying thing to wind this watch because with each wind you can see the power reserve hand moving. I usually wind the watch to about 20 hours to get past the dregs of the spring, and then just let the self-winding mechanism take care of the rest. The dial itself has a fine sunburst pattern radiating from the center. For ages, I thought this dial was champagne colored, but Orient officially describes it as white. I guess it just looks champagne because of the reflection of the gold markers and hands. Either way, the color's really unique. I appreciate that Orient took the time to get even the smallest of details right on this dial as well. For example, there's the sleek-looking textured ridging in the power reserve indicator subdial, and the Japan trademark and number are printed in such a tiny font they're nearly invisible. This is one of those rare watches that is perfectly proportioned and looks fabulous from any angle. The movement in this watch is the F6N44, a 22 joule in-house caliber made by Orient, running at 21,600 vibrations per hour. Officially, this caliber has an accuracy of -15 to +25 seconds per day, but Japanese companies tend to underpromise and overdeliver on their stats, and it's true in this case as well. My watch runs very consistently at +10 to +12 seconds per day, which means it's an extremely accurate watch. If that statement doesn't make sense to you, ask your watchmaker. This is a self-winding movement with a rotor, but as I mentioned earlier, it's also hand-winding and it's hackable. So if you want to set the time to the exact second, you can do that. The self-winding mechanism is smooth, it's quiet, and most importantly, it winds the watch fully with very little wrist movement. I've always been impressed with how well this watch winds from the rotor. The finishing on this movement is really nice as well, and to show you what I mean, here's what a workhorse Seiko NH35A movement looks like, and here's what the Orient Star movement looks like in comparison. You can see the difference in refinement. The Classic has the Orient Star logo in gold on the oscillating weight, on top of Geneva striping. The striping is a bit too subtle for my taste, but it still looks nice. The plates exhibit expertly spaced and even perlage, and with the exception of the main plate, which isn't decorated. The screws are also nicely polished, with chamfered slots. Now, having said all that, as well made as this movement is, this is still considered a lower mid-tier level of finishing. So what would you get if you were to spend several $1,000s more? Well, at first you might get a few extra features like a swan's neck regulator for fine adjustments, or an amagnetic silicone balance spring. But even in more expensive mass-produced watches, such as a Rolex Submariner, the finishing of the movement isn't particularly better. However, once you move up to something like a Grand Seiko or a Patek Philippe, it's a whole different world. The screws would be heat tempered and blued, or black polished, or both. The screw holes and the plate edges would be beveled and polished. The wheels would be polished or snailed, and so on. These are the missing refinements that add dozens of hours of work and thousands of dollars in price to a watch. So if you buy the Orient Star Classic, you have to make a decision. Can you live without these extra refinements, or would you rather pay the thousands more and get them? That's for you to decide. So what's my conclusion about this watch? Well, that's pretty clear. The Orient Star Classic is a beautifully made, aesthetically pleasing watch with a timeless design, and the way it plays with light is remarkable. When Japanese people review this watch, the expression they most often used is perfectly harmonious. This is a watch that screams old money and good taste. The truly amazing thing is, because this watch is made by Orient Star instead of, say, a Swiss brand with luxury markup, you can buy it for under $500. That is stunning. I think it's difficult to find a better dress watch than this for even 5 or 6 times that price, especially in a brand with real history and an in-house caliber. This is simply one of my favorite watches to wear. Just like the Jaeger LeCoultre, I know it's a great watch by the fact that whenever I check the time, I find myself taking a second glance to appreciate it. Well, that's my review of the Orient Star Classic. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video.